A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the second panel of our flagship conference of EuroCommerce, dedicated this year to jobs and skills in retail and wholesale. And as the title of the conference, highlights. A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the second panel of our flagship conference of EuroCommerce, dedicated this year to jobs and skills in retail and wholesale. And as the title of the conference, a very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the second streaming. Jobs and skills in retail and wholesale. And as the title of yes. All right. Can you all hear me now? I think I start again. So this was a false start, and welcome all of you to the second panel of our flagship conference dedicated this year to jobs and skills in retail and wholesale. We're very pleased. We have more than 150 participants today at this conference. We had a first panel focused on social dialogue earlier today. And as the title of the conference highlights, in commerce, it's all in all its form and business model. It is a people's business. We're serving people, and it is people serving people. We're very proud to be the first private sector employer in Europe, retail and wholesale. That's 29 million people that are working in this area. And I was struck only watching at the Belgian television last night. This was the day when the Belgian government authorized the so-called non-essential shops to reopen. And you will see these people that are serving customers, whether they are in large chains of supermarkets or very independent stores. All these people were very proud to be back in business and to be able to serve their customers. This is something that is really very much part of the DNA of the sector, and it's a lot of people working in the sector, and it's serving people in the individual customers. So that is definitely something that is important, and it's crucial that we hold this conference on this very important issue. And the world is changing, and this session we will really look a little bit more of an helicopter view about how the changing world in retail and wholesale. And this year we have certainly witnessed with the COVID-19 pandemic that the changes has actually been accelerated. We've talked about the digitalization of the economy, and certainly our sector has seen, some people are saying that what we have seen in the last 8 months is the same growth in e-commerce that what we have seen in the last 6 years, whatever the KPI that you're using. We also see that the green transition is very, very important, and retail and wholesaler definitely want to play a major role in that transformation that the European Union is very much supported with this twin transition of digital transition and the green transition. And to discuss all of this, we have a very exquisite panel, and I'm very pleased that during the next hour and 10 minutes, we will be able to discuss that. Commissioner Schmit, who was invited and initially committed to come, has unfortunately been prevented to come and has other commitments. But he has sent a video message that we will show and display in a few minutes. But he's also been replaced or he has mandated his Director General. And Joost, Korte, a very warm welcome to you. You're the Director General of DG Employment. We have known each other for a number of years, also in your previous incarnations. But we're very grateful that you will participate in our panel and give the Commission's view or even sometimes your own personal views on some of the items that are at stake. We have Denis Pennel. Denis Pennel, warm welcome. You're the Managing Director of the World Employment Confederation. That is very specialized in representing all the businesses that are in temporary work and agencies and interim. But more than that, you are really a great thought leader on these issues of the future of work. You've written several books on the subject. For me and for all of us, you've been a source of inspiration in Brussels on looking at those issues, and you will set the scene in that area. We are grateful to have three of our major members, two from our major companies that are there. We have Cristian Marinelli, who is, your exact title these days is Global Leader for Positive Human Impacts. I think absolutely beautiful title, which we have sort of translated a little bit more prosaically as the Group HR Director for ADEO. Now, ADEO may not be all well known to all of you, but it's the number one companies in DIY and home improvement. It is a number 3 company in the world, operating in 13 countries, in 8 EU countries, France, Spain, Italy, Greece, Romania, Cyprus, Portugal, Poland. I don't know if I've named them all, but I think they're almost there. And under the very well-known brand names as Leroy Merlin or Brico Center, Bricoman, or Aki are some of the other names under which your store are operating. You have 130,000 people working for the ADEO Group, so that's quite huge, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you the challenges of taking all these more than 100,000 people in this new world of work. You also have more than 800 stores all over the world. I mean, I mentioned Europe, but you're also very strong in Brazil and in Russia. Welcome, Cristian. And we have Susana Correia de Campos, who is Head of Employee Relations and Internal Social Responsibilities at Jerónimo Martins. Again, a name that is the name of the companies, better known with the leading supermarket brands Pingo Doce in Portugal and Biedronka in Poland, and you're also active in Colombia. Very warm welcome, Susana, to be on our panel. Last but not least is Tomáš Prouza, who is heading our Czech member association, the Czech Federation for Trade and Tourism. He's himself been also a politician before, being a Minister of Finance and EU Affairs, so having been on both sides of some of these discussions. He's also Vice President of EuroCommerce. Tomáš, very warm welcome. So with all this, we're looking forward to a great discussion on this. So we will start with the video message that we have received from Commissioner Nicolas Schmit.
Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot be with you today, but I would like to share a few thoughts on the changing world of work and the challenges that various sectors of the economy are facing. Before the start of the pandemic, working life in the European Union was already being radically transformed by the combined effect of digitalization, globalization, and the growth of the services sector. On top of these structural trends, the pandemic has particularly hit the retail and wholesale sector, one of the largest in terms of EU employment. If I have a single message today for you, reskilling and upskilling of your workforce is going to be key for the resilience of your sector and beyond of the whole economy. The EU is mobilized to support the necessary effort in partnership with member states and, most importantly, the private sector. Of the 5 million people in the euro area who lost their jobs in the first half of this year, almost half worked in retail and wholesale sector trade, accommodation and food services, and transportation. Digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, and ICTs have been useful in fighting the pandemic. They have allowed businesses to operate by facilitating social distancing in the workplace and by enabling people to work remotely. However, some workers whose jobs require physical presence and proximity do not have the luxury to work from home. As digital technologies continue to change the nature of our jobs, many people will be faced with labor market transitions they can only cope with if they have the needed digital skill set. This is clearly visible in the retail sector, where e-commerce has also been confronted with challenges stemming from insufficient digital skills. 44% of European citizens lack basic digital skills. This is why in July we relaunched the European Skills Agenda. It pursues a real paradigm shift in skills to take advantage of the green and digital transitions and support a prompt recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. We have also just adopted the Pact for Skills on 10th of November. The Pact aims to inspire and support concrete commitments from individual companies and other stakeholders, such as vet providers or social partners. By joining the Pact, stakeholders will get access to networking, knowledge, guidance, and resource hubs. I would like to invite you to join the Pact for Skills. This would give your members access to technical support and to good practices that can be replicated and scaled up. It would also help them make a good use of the significant EU resources available to invest in upskilling and reskilling. My team and I are ready to listen to your specific challenges regarding skills, your opinion on the Pact, how you would like to act, and what type of support would be needed at EU level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Schmit, for those very precise and encouraging words, and very pleased to see that you have also recognized the leadership role and the what we have sometimes called the food heroes and the retail heroes during the crisis that have fulfilled a very essential job during the pandemic and continue to do so. We're actually quite pleased often to see that, because a job that has been taken for granted, certainly in our affluent societies, is being recognized as a very essential role in providing essential function for the people. So let me give the floor to Denis Pennel now to set a bit the scene and on this how you look at the future world of work. Denis.
Thank you very much, Cristian, and thank you for the invitation. Very pleased to be with you today. Indeed, as the Managing Director of the World Employment Confederation, we present the large board of HR services and therefore having a deep understanding of what's going on in the labor market. So I indeed prepared a couple of slides for you to get some background. And if you can move to the next one, because my first comment will be about, but has this, COVID-19 crisis changed when it comes to the world of work? And clearly, you mentioned that, Cristian. The last couple of months have accelerated some trends that have been there before and for a while. Whether it's the rise of a remote and dispersed workforce, digitalization, automation, it has been there. But one word you could use is that over the last couple of months, we have seen a kind of a quantum leap. Some companies have indeed accelerated, this trend and have, digitalized their operations or automated their automation, gaining probably 5 years in terms of implementing this. But we have also seen, and this was not new, a further polarization of labor markets between those who have, high skills and those who have lower skills, and the disappearance of this, middle skills workforce. And last but not least, clearly for running a business today means more uncertainty, difficulty to have any visibility on the future, and as a consequence, a wider use of diverse forms of work. So all these, accelerations have led to indeed hybrid working. We see more and more. What we are not always aware is that some new impacts have also developed. Maybe we see less well, but we have also moved from a just-in-time environment to a just-in-case. In the past, companies had to adapt, real time to deliver services and products. So indeed, they had to be agile. But nowadays, they have also to be just-in-case, meaning that there is some risks that they are not aware of today. So they have to be ready for anything, actually. And once again, for new events that cannot be planned. Of course, we have to reinvent, social interactions at work. This is new. The fact that many people are now working, remotely, we have to reinvent the way we interact between work colleagues. Health and safety issues have been there for a while, but now with a clear focus on mental health, and also for companies, in the past, health and safety meant for many of them dealing with accidents at work, to prevent accident at work. But managing a sanitary crisis is something completely new for many companies and for people. So this is indeed a new trend that companies have to adapt. Skills was mentioned already many times by the commissioner, by yourself, Cristian. We need to redefine critical skills. We need to implement lifelong learning skill solutions, very clear. And also a consequence of the rise of remote working is that work is becoming more and more output-oriented, meaning that actually we care less about the number of working hours. People are working. What matters is indeed what is being delivered at the end of the day or at the end of the week. So indeed, we see also more complexity in the working environment. And last but not least, we see also some trends going backwards. So putting on the reverse gear, it was said that before the COVID-19 crisis, there had never been so many people at work in Europe. So it was really a war for talent labor markets. It seems we are going backwards to a war for a job market, where indeed with high level of unemployment. For your sector, of course, the topic of global supply chains has been very high on the agenda, how to organize that efficiently. Now, more and more, we are talking about, inshoring again, how I can relocalize my suppliers or my production to avoid to be too much dependent on foreign countries. We have also seen a return of the welfare states because of all the supporting measures being adopted by governments and by the European Union. Of course, more and more the state has a key role to play there. And from a business point of view, it's less now about growth than resilience and efficiency. How can I accommodate this new environment? And also now we see, and this is something completely new, but going backwards to the past, restrictions on cross-border labor mobility. The European Union is based on, has been built on freedom of movement for citizens. Now we have seen recently some trends going backwards. So all of this has mean, and if you can move to the next line, please, to indeed an acceleration of the rise of diverse forms of work. And by diverse forms of work, I mean three things: diverse forms of contractual arrangement. And this is not new, once again. It's mostly between the 1980s and the year 2000s that in Europe, we have seen on top of open-ended contracts, the rise of agency work contract, direct fixed-term contract, self-employment, apprenticeship contracts, a multiplication of contractual arrangements when it comes to the work relationship. I would say from the year 2000, we have seen a diversification in terms of working time, full-time remaining the norm, but an increased amount of workers working part-time on a temporary basis or even shared time. So this is also new. But last but not least, and this is for me the final step into this diversification of work and work becoming more hybrid, is diverse forms of work location. And of course, the crisis there has accelerated in a very fast way the development of remote working. So now you can work from your office, from your kitchen. You can work online, which is also new. We are seeing also the development of co-working spaces. So work has become more and more diverse indeed, and this diversification of the work location is the final step in terms of work becoming more and more hybrid. On the next slide, clearly what we see is that flexible work is set to increase in the future. Because uncertainty is going to be higher in the future, clearly businesses are going to use more and more flexible work because it's difficult for them to predict the future. And interesting, this is a research made by McKinsey. They have interviewed 800 executives, people from all around the world. And clearly, these business leaders are seeing in the future, with the next 2 years, an increase of temporary workers, freelancers, or independent contractors, but less from a remote point of view and more from an on-site point of view. So 70% of them are saying that in the future, we are going to use more freelancers, contractors, temporary workers, but working on-site. So very interesting, because this is going against this idea of remote working. But then on the next slide, you see there's still this, divergence or the gap between the expectations from the workers, maybe, and the employers. Because when you ask the new people, the people who have been working remotely recently, the vast majority of them, almost 3/4 of them, are fully enjoying working from home, and they want to go on working from home. The views on the employers might be different there. We know that before the crisis, it was the employers who were the most reluctant to develop remote working, while the employees were, in demand for that. And it seems the situation has not changed. Of course, companies had to adapt and to implement remote working, but clearly there is still more appetite for working from home and working remotely from the individuals compared to the companies and the employees. And let's be clear, on the next slide, you will see that, this COVID-19 crisis had psychological and financial toll on talent, as you can see on the next slide, hopefully. And the first one, of course, is that we are all missing social interaction. The office is not only a place to go to work, this is also a place to socialize. And clearly, this is a Randstad research done at the international level. 58% of the employees are lacking, this socializing moment, networking moment at the office. And the other big concern from the remote worker is the fact that we are all a bit fed up with all these online conferences and meetings. It's very efficient, but we are lacking there again the human factor, the human dimension there. And last but not least, of course, the negative impact of this crisis is also in relation to unemployment, or the fact that many people have been put on short-time working schemes or furlough schemes, or even some of them have been asked to reduce their pay, to keep their job. So clearly the impact is negative. Just to conclude, I think all of us, and it will be important to discuss this during the next 1 hour, if you look at the forthcoming challenges, and that's the last slide of my presentation, what do we have to look at for the next couple of months? Clearly, when it comes to health and safety at work, this is a big issue. And again, it's all about well-being, mental health, but also now that we're entering into the new phase of the pandemic, what will be the testing policy for companies and employers? What will be the vaccination policy? Will employers be able to vaccinate their staff? That's a big question. The next one is, how are we going to cope with the stop-and-go economy? Clearly, the virus is not going, definitely. It might reappear. We might have a third wave, maybe a fourth wave. How we are going to deal with that, how companies can adapt to this unpredictable fluctuation of outputs. Then flexible work is there to remain. How do we embed this flexible working arrangement into the overall HR policy of companies? Managing a remote entire workforce is not that easy, so that's a key challenge for companies. Of course, as mentioned earlier, we will have to reallocate displaced workers from sectors that have been hardly hit by the crisis to high-demand sectors, but you cannot do this just overnight. Skilling is, of course, a key solution there. But how are we going to implement, lifelong learning schemes, encourage continuous learning on a remote basis. I think that's a key point we'll have to discuss. And last but not least, today there is two key words on the political agenda. It begins with an R, resilience and recovery. How we can build more resilient, people, more resilient organization, and as a consequence, how to build more resilient labor markets. I think that's really a key point for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly, before going to other panelists, just ask you a quick question, and if you can give us a quick answer, because when I hear from you, indeed, we're going to look more at output-oriented work, and we're also going to go probably much more into home working, and yet we were all taken aback by this ruling by the European Court of Justice about a year ago, saying that no, we're all going to have to find a way to measure the number of working hours. To which a lot of employers says that we need to go back to the ticking clock, and I know they're all modern ways of digitally measuring that, and there's a way to actually measuring when we're switching on and switching off. But do you believe and this is probably for Joost Korte to come back in his intervention as well, but the EU is still in sync with the evolving of way of work, or do we have to really think differently? And this would be a message maybe to the EU about different ways of measuring outputs and the proper words on work rather than working hours.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. I think we need to rethink about working time. What does that mean? How do we measure the working time? How do we measure, which might be a better indication, the workload of the employee? What do they have to deliver? That's probably a better way to assess the quantity of work to deliver. I think less and less, presenteeism makes sense. You don't have to go to the office to work. You can work from home. It's not because you are at the office that you are working. You can be sitting behind your chair and your computer and just watch some videos on screen. So yeah, I think this idea of redefining working time is a very important one, and we might have to adapt, regulation on that.
Thank you. So, Cristian, let me come to you. You've heard now from the commissioner and from Denis how the world of work is evolving, how particularly during the COVID crisis this has evolved. So, what's your take, and what are you doing within the ADEO group to tackle this challenge and retaining and keeping talent? Because at the end of the day, as we said, it's a people's business, but it's people who are happy at work and who also perform at the task and the goals and fulfill the objective that need to be fulfilled.
Thank you, Cristian. Hello to everybody. It's very nice to be with you. We've got a very interesting presentation made by Denis, Pennel, and we see how quick our world is changing. We all agree that digitalization is imposing new standards, new customer standards in terms of high level of expectations. For example, a same-day delivery for all market, but also employee expectation in all HR fields. We measure how difficult it is to compete. It's not anymore about just having the best product and the best stores. We have to add also the best internet site, the best supply chain, etc. And of course, nothing is possible without the best talented and motivated people. And this could be a very big problem. How can we hire the most talented digital people when they consider classic retail almost as a yesterday market? Retail is still one of the largest employers, but some retail employees are confused. If technology and automations is the one who will kill their job, why should they reskill themselves and learn new competencies to accelerate this process? Finally, are we condemned to become the first contributor to unemployment rate as a retailer? I think that one of the solutions is once again to come back to our more strong retail roots, but to make them shine with the new colors of our times. Commerce, as in all long history, these two essential components, true from the smaller boutique to the biggest store. It works when it brings something useful in a community. It might be a product, maybe a services or whatever. But it's all about, as you reminded us, it's all about human relations. But today, those elements are not audible anymore if a retailer does not have the new standards of digitalizations that digitalization is imposing to everybody. If you do not have services of same-day delivery, you can have the best salesman of the world, but you won't be the preferred one. So that's our way. Getting to have as soon as possible the new customers and employee standards to make our historical strong components as usefulness and human relations remarkable again. More digital, more human. For example, talking about the attractions of digital talent, of course, it's hard for everybody. In some countries, we could analyze which were their fears thinking about retail. And we discovered that those candidates are extremely scarce in terms of digital tools to do their jobs and ambitious projects to join. They do not accept to step back in this field. Since we do not miss ambitious projects, we planned to just take the more advanced solutions for digital people. So we get the new standards, and then our singularity as human cultures and leadership styles becomes a veritable plus once again, and candidates' feedback rates are extremely high.
Can you give us...
For our store in Paris, we are testing a process with no curriculum, with no career summary. We ask candidates to send us a video as they normally do with their friends. We decided to adapt ourselves and not to force them to use a classic company tool as career summary. We had technology to create a more human and authentic recruiting process because even interviews are not the same after that. We have the same attitude for working on retention. We are the one of the best because we added to our historical strengths, for example, our sharing policy with variable remunerations for almost all our team. And we have 70,000 employees who decide to be shareholders of ADEO, not just managers, but mainly salesmen and cashiers. But we have standards in our employee experience. For example, lately we distributed more than 80,000 smartphones to allow our teams to be as the customer or like in the real life outside. We have a powerful internal social network with more than 100,000 collaborators active every day. And data analysis in Italy demonstrates strong correlations between social activity on internal networks and motivation and then retentions. So more technology can make it more human. But the new standards are not just technological. For a final examples, we are present in more than 800 cities, and our teams live in these cities. And they are extremely thankful when we allow them to help their local communities. We get hundreds of CSR's local actions. We create a facilitating HR framework to invite all our teams to take part in these programs. And these topics are the most liked by our employees all over the world. This is also a new standard. So finally, I think this is a big opportunity for us. New standards plus our meaningful components become just a fantastic accelerator for a positive impact for our teams, the customers, the companies, and the societies as well. Thank you. Thank you
very much, Cristian. Can I just have a follow-up question in terms of you operating in 8 EU countries? Do you see some countries where all of that is easier or is more difficult in others? And is this related to the quality of education, primary education, university education? Is it also, do you do certain things together with trade union partners? Can you give us, try to be short if you can, but just in 1 minute or 2 minutes, just to a bit of a picture of differential across the EU?
Yeah, of course, we are more easily implanted in digital skill. We are more stronger in Russia and in Brazil than in European Union. because there's a different background, and I think retail has an image that is different in Europe than in Brazil and in Russia. So we have to make an effort in order to show us as a digital company, not just like a company with stores, but really to express and to explain what we are building. So this is effort. Is stronger in Europe, but it's more difficult to market in Europe, really, in extreme sentence.
Okay, thank you. Susana, tell us, you're operating in 2 countries, but as a company, I think with the same value. Give us a bit of some practical examples of what you do to take your all workforce into the 21st century.
Oh, thank you, Cristian, and thank you to EuroCommerce for the invitation. Congratulations for the conference, and thank you also to Denis and to the other panelists also. I would like to focus on 2 points because a lot has been said. So I would like to focus on 2 points that we consider as challenges in Jerónimo Martins and for the modern world of work and retail. So the conclusion is simple. Already mentioned, the world of work is undergoing dramatic changes before our eyes. And after the pandemic hit our lives, we know that this change was accelerating and in a very complex environment. So it is a given fact that the employment models are evolving and to responding to. So we need to rethink work. And this is the discussion that we are having internally in Jerónimo Martins and in our countries. So we need to combine classic employment models with new working models, with new forms of employment, and be able to have access to a wider range of forms of work that could be able to meet the needs of both parties, the employer and the employee. Flexible contracts, including fixed-term contracts that need to be reinvented urgently, flexible hour schemes and time arrangements, flexible location, flexible tasks. Flexible tasks is particularly relevant when combined with the upskilling and reskilling of workers, functional mobility. So we all need to promote agile and flexible work. And this needs to be welcomed by our legislations. When accepting a higher level of flexibility and agility, I believe that we can be able to promote opportunities that are more adjusted to different lifestyles, to parents, to students, to elder people, to everyone, because everyone should find the possibility to accommodate their own interests, responsibilities, and with a labor opportunity. And having access to a work-life integration, much more than balance to a fair work-life integration. And this was highlighted in the recent joint statement of the EuroCommerce, and it is particularly relevant for us. And secondly, as Cristian was saying, we are a people business, and we are a company of people. We are, most part of our employees are the heroes of the front line when responding to COVID. So we need to face in a very important and strategical way a new talent management approach in terms of attraction, retention, training, and development of our employees. We know that we have technology, a lot of trends impacting the structure of talent and work. So technological innovation, demographic changes, globalization, new consumer market habits, and all of these factors are creating this open talent economy. So we need to embrace it. In Jerónimo Martins, we are preparing and just to give you some practical ideas. So first of all, we need to access and engage with a talent pool that is no longer reachable through traditional recruitment challenges. So we need to be open to new communication technologies and make sure that we are turning every place into a recruitment place. And that digital and new communication technologies are important tools in terms of recruitment. And also the creation of development paths, because we need to be academies. We need to be schools. We need to provide learning paths and to be an academy of skills. So upskilling, in which our staff will gain new skills to help in their current roles through training and skills development. And this is particularly relevant because we need to do a job analysis of each function and make sure that we are providing training and make sure that people are being being more and more adjusted and that we are coping with the new challenges for each function, and especially digital. And reskilling also, in which our employees need the capabilities to take on different or entirely new roles, sometimes even totally out of their comfort zone. And this is particularly challenging. Change management, communication will be absolutely crucial tools to help an organization to develop and to build their workplace of the future. But just one word in terms of leadership. So we believe that we need to invest in other skills, such as emotional intelligence, emotional literacy, to make sure that our leaders support their employees and prevent mental health diseases and distress, and make sure that we have healthy people, and healthy people makes a healthy organization. And attraction and retention also will depend on the creation of a diverse and inclusive environment to which employees can bring their whole self to work and feel that their own characteristics are valorized. One size does not fit all anymore. And so, and for us, this is particularly relevant to make sure that we are creating a culture of diversity and inclusion where people feel comfortable to be whatever they want, and make sure that most of all, we are a meritocratic system in terms of development of our talent. Just a few ideas.
No, thank you. Lots of on there. So I will come back to you on the issues around emotional literacies and soft skills, which are very important in our sector, and also be interesting to know how you do that, if you do that on your own or with schools and university or at the sector level. But let me come to Joost. Korte, you've heard a little bit what people have said. Some people said we have to reinvent the way we looked at working hours or output. We need to rethink fixed-term contracts. It is still true that within some quarters, possibly within the Commission, certainly within trade unions, I mean, everything that is not an open-ended full-time contract is not considered as a proper form of work, and sometimes considered as precarious work. So, how do you look at this, and where does the Commission can help?
Well, thank you very much, Cristian, for having me on this panel. I'm very happy that I can contribute a little bit from my perspective, and of course, the most important things have already been said by the Commissioner just before me. I think maybe a couple of points on the crisis and the recovery process. I think it is absolutely vital, as the Commissioner has said, and as indeed as Mr. Marinelli and also Mrs. Correia Campos have said, that it is very important that we invest more, that companies invest even more in their human capital, in skills. It's clear that without those investments, the recovery process will be very, very hard. And it is clear also, as was made, I think, very clear by Mr. Pennel in his presentation, that it is true that the service sector is also, looking at the data that we have, the hardest hit, of course, so far by the crisis, and the retail sector, certain parts of the retail sector also. And therefore, I think, yes, I can only encourage you to continue working on everything that was said. The European Union helps. As you know, we have funding. I do not want to go into all the funding possibilities that there are, but there are many. And if the European Council next week can agree on a compromise on the rule of law mechanism with Hungary and Poland, that money, the extra money and the MFF will be rolled out very fast. And I think this is the best chance we have as a European Union to recover quickly from this terrible crisis. That's the first time. This the first point. The second point, of course, I mean, more importantly than this, I think it is clear that the trends that were there already for a long time, which you can capture under the future of work concept, they are not new. The only thing that is happening now is that in this pressure cooker of the COVID crisis, of course, everything becomes clearer and everything goes a lot faster. And I think this is what we're now undergoing. And I agree very much with all those colleagues on the panel who said that we will never return to the old situation. I think that is pretty clear to me as well. This is a very profound fundamental change of the world of work. We needed somehow a crisis for this to happen, and that is in a way, of course, a problem and puts us in front of very, very difficult challenges. I mean, I'm not running a business, but I have a department where there are 1,000 people working. I'm now probably the only one, maybe with 2 or 3 other people in the office. Everybody's working from home. 35,000 people in the commission are working from home. If you had asked me whether this would ever be possible, Cristian, even in March, I would have said you were mad. But it's actually happening. So this will have profound changes to the world of work, and many of them are also positive. And I think we should take a sort of an optimistic look at this. We can combine it with the green and the digital transition. I think honestly, it can become a better place. Thirdly, on the flexibility, which is an element of this. It's not the only element, but it's a very important element. Again, I think more flexible contracts is not a new phenomenon, and it's clear that also young people are much more ready and in fact keen to change jobs. I think it's also a generational issue, and it is clear from all the studies and also the indications we have from our agencies such as Eurofound and CDFOP and our own studies that people will change jobs much more often than was the case certainly for my generation. And this is going to be in a way the new normal, and I don't think we should be afraid of it. However, of course, flexibility is not a one-way street. Flexibility cannot only be a flexibility on the side of the worker or on the person who works not on a worker's contract, but on an atypical contract, as we call it in our jargon. 1 in 4 of the European workforce is already on an atypical contract. This can be anything. It can be part-time, it can be temporary, whatever, all kinds of shapes and forms. And this trend will surely not stop. And the people generally, I think, can be happy with this even, the people who work. But what is, I think, important is to recognize that there are also certain minimum basic rights that need to be guaranteed for everybody. And this is, I think, some sort of security needs to be granted. Access to social security needs to be granted. And I think also pension in some form or other has to be built up, because otherwise the society as a whole also takes a huge gamble as to what's going to happen over time. And I don't think some labor markets in the European Union, I can talk with a bit more authority maybe about the Netherlands, which is my own country, where it is very clear, also from independent study, that the flexibilization that has been introduced there is just not going to be sustainable in the long term. I mean, reports have been written about this, that this is not going to work. So there is a limit to what you can do. On the specificities of the working time, there, Cristian, you provoke me, as always, in a very friendly way. So I need to say something about that. I mean, the working time directive is the result of an agreement between the social partners in Europe. So honestly, nothing would be better for us than if the social partners of Europe would sit together and say, we're going to negotiate a new agreement. The current directive is from 1996. We are going to do a review in 2021 and a report in 2022. There are lots of issues you can say about the working time directive, including whether we still need time registration. I mean, the case you mentioned from Spain, something must have gone really wrong between the employer and the worker. At the end of the day, it was an issue of proof. You need to know if you have an 8-hour contract, whether you've actually worked 10 hours or 8 hours. And if you work 10 hours, obviously you get it's overtime. You get more money. who registers this? There the court said, okay, if nothing is organized for this particular business, then of course the employer has to register it. They didn't say that you always have to register. It just needs to be, there needs to be some sort of understanding and trust as to how this should go. Underlying this, and that's my last word, is this concept also, which I would advise you to take very seriously. It's the right to disconnect. It's not entirely the same as the working time directive issues, but it is linked to it. And there's actually a report in the European Parliament, may have been already on your radar screen, an own initiative report which is called The Right to Disconnect, and which has been approved by the Employment Committee already, which is going to the plenary next year, and which is about, is there somehow a limit to what can be asked from an employee? Of course there is. We all know there is. And this needs to be organized. And again, it would be a fantastic issue, I think, if the employers and the trade unions at the EU level were to sit together and work this out. The countries that have made legislation on the right to disconnect, there are 3 or 4 of them. And of course, again, the pressure cooker of COVID made this. The legislation, I think it's Spain, if I'm not wrong, Portugal and Italy, but I'm not entirely sure. They enacted a law that says basically only one thing: social partners, please organize it. I think, and I think that's a very good approach. It is not going to be possible, I think, at the level of the European Union to fix a one-size-fits-all for everybody, and maybe not even at the national level. This is something that needs to be taken forward per sector. And your sector is again different from the platform sector, and you have all kinds of different arrangements, but it needs to be organized. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Joost, for these thoughts and these also quick reactions to the points and being engaged on those. So, Tomáš, let me come to you and you from in the Czech Republic, where, as I said, there is a good level of collective bargaining. How do you look, and how does your country look at these issues and the future of work in retail and wholesale?
Cristian, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for having me. Well, Denis built a very good framework for our panel, so let me just maybe fill in 5 quick pieces. First important trend, and we all touched on it, is digitalization, automation. We've seen that at least in Czech Republic also came just in time with this diminishing willingness to do manual work despite increasing wages. And we had over the last 5 to 7 years increasing problems of filling up manual jobs, and that of course has been a huge challenge. I think COVID that helped. I think I've seen much faster corporate decision making on these digitalization investments than any time in the past. Things that would usually take 2 years to decide were decided in 2 weeks over the spring. So we've seen so much faster rollout of all the digital solutions. Also, that came hand in hand with the increased willingness of customers to use digital solutions all over the board. Second point I wanted to mention is in the Czech Republic, we've seen significant increases of wages in retail, 10 to 15% every single year. And that also changed very quickly how retail has been perceived. In the past, retail was one of these employers of last resort, if I may want to call that. Now we've seen actually as a long-term employment. We see people making long-term career plans in retail, also including the fact that we are now trying to attract all the new talent in digital, IT, artificial intelligence, and all these other new types of jobs that retail has not been connected with in the past. The third point, I think why these changes happen and why they actually work quite well is a significant positive role of collective bargaining in the Czech Republic. And we have a long-term tradition using collective bargaining. We basically never needed government to step in significantly for these discussions, and we always managed to have collective agreements and, as I mentioned, quite a strong wage growth over the last couple of years. So maybe one of the also reasons why we never needed the government to step in is that almost nobody works for the minimum wage in retail. So that has not been an issue for our segment. Number 4, I want to mention is also that COVID opened much wider discussions on employee benefits, including quite I think sensitive issues. I want to call that like vaccination, and we all are awaiting the COVID vaccines as a solution that should take us out of the current situation. But at the same time, we are now having quite a heated discussions on whether retail employees should be among the first groups that will get vaccinated, but also whether the vaccine for the retail employees should be compulsory. Again, these are not easy discussions, and we also on that have actually quite a good dialogue with the trade unions, but you know that a lot of vaccination fake news floating around. So again, that is quite a fragile discussion at the same time. And number 5, one of the HR challenges we faced, and also that brings me back to my government years, is that we realized how inflexible governments are when a crisis like COVID hits. And one example, when we hire a new person to work in retail, in food retail, they have to undergo a checkup from a doctor so that they are certified that they are healthy to work in retail. But both in the spring during the first wave and also now during the second wave, many practitioners were closed, and we simply could not get a doctor who would actually conduct these checkups. So we actually had to spend over more than 3 weeks to convince the government to actually waive this requirement so that we can actually hire much needed people that would help us deal with this huge growth in sales during these first crisis weeks with the lockdown. So again, what I see, companies moving much faster, companies now much more open to dialogue with the trade unions to make sure that the employers are satisfied in retail, because we need them for the long-term stability, and the government now being quite a laggard on the changes that COVID has shown we need to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomáš. Very interesting couple of points. I will come back to you also to indeed, how you do that in the Czech Republic. Let me first come back to the point that Susana mentioned on these issues of emotional literacy and the sort of soft skills, interpersonal skills. One of our HR directors, one of our companies, is talking about what is needed in retail is about high tech and high touch. So it's a combination of technology, being comfortable with digital, but at the same time being like in top quality hotels or in the health and care sector, is taking care of the people and their needs and understanding their. Can you give us a couple of examples of the things that you do practically on these two fronts? And with who are you working? Are you working on your own as a company? Do you have the same curriculum you have in Portugal and in Poland, or do you do that at a group level? Do you do that with trade unions? Do you do that with APED as the trade association? Just in a couple of minutes, give us some sense. Then you need to put your mic on.
I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you, Cristian. We believe that the employer branding of each company will be made pretty much about how we care for our people will be the crucial question in terms of employer branding. So the way we respond and support our employees in times of COVID, it's employer branding, and we will be surely we will be judged by our people because of what we did or because we didn't be able to do it. The way we care. So, and we have we are a company that has tradition in terms of supporting our people. So what we did was to make sure that we were putting in place the measures and actions that could support our employees and their families in these times, in these very difficult times and as uncertain times, by providing health and education programs. We already have a lot of internal health and education programs, but we did a lot of exceptional actions dedicated to the support to the COVID measures, like, for instance, to give computers to our children who were not be able to be linked with the school, or just providing, for instance, online supporting in maths or in English, and just to providing them more resources in terms of facing this new school environment. We also a mental health program in terms of prevention, but also in terms of response to our people who were asking us for support. And we are now relaunching the Social Emergency Fund, just to make sure that we are supporting all people in all type of emergency situations, family emergency situations. So it's really important for us, and we strongly believe, we do believe that this type of response, it will be even more crucial in the future. So our governments, our states were not prepared for this type of crisis. And this is totally new, but the vulnerable will become more vulnerable. And we have a lot of people that are that we know that this is the job. It represents all the only opportunity for them to have a decent, comfortable life. So we need to make sure that that besides compensation, besides rewarding, we are able also to understand the needs, especially priority needs, and make sure that are be able to bring their best self to the company, or otherwise this cannot be possible.
Can you give me a sense of, is there a number of days, or how do you, I mean, I was going to say force, but I mean, really entice all you people? I mean, you say you have to go through a number of trainings. What, can you give us some numbers? You know, how many training days per employee that is required or is encouraged? You're on mute.
I am so sorry. Besides the legal training dates, we are adjusting ourselves to make sure that we have this e-learning environment where people can learn, and not only the learning, the technical learning, but also the soft skills learning, because in the future we believe that this is going to be crucial. Everyone already talked about resilience, about not being resistant to change, to have emotional literacy. And in the future, and Cristian, you were mentioning precisely this, besides the technical skills, we need to be properly skilled to make sure that we face a new client, a new environment, a new demand, and new times. So everything is new. And we are not very comfortable when everything is new. Suddenly the floor is moving. And we are already in this very uncomfortable mood, and this is precisely what we need to adapt, to make sure that our people are becoming more fit to this new pattern of constant changing and involvement.
I think it's a very good point. I mean, last week I attended the Congress from the Handels Congress from our German friends, and there was the head of HR from Groupe said, we're learning two things, fundamental things to our people. One is make sure you are comfortable with change, so Veränderung, and the second thing was that you're comfortable with continuously learning. And these are the two key traits that are very important to instill in our employees. Cristian, any sense for give us some practical examples or initiatives how you do this sort of high touch, high skills, continuous training in the ADEO group?
Yeah, I like very much this high touch, high tech, high touch expressions. It makes me think about to another quote that I like very much, that hard skill, it helps you to open the door, but soft skill are the ones that help you to cross the room and to go to succeed in your job. And so that's why we are working on different level in order to improve hard skill, but also soft skill with some global programs, but also some very local programs. And sometimes we have quite of a surprising attitude from our employees, because sometimes we talk a lot about the resistance of changing. But I think with this COVID crisis, we find out the people, when they have the good motivations, they are able to learn immediately new competencies and to make the effort. Just for an example, in Spain, during the first period, we did have not our store allowed to be open for our customers for the lockdown period. And so we asked to our peoples who were ready to join a training program to be able, from a remote position, to start selling products in relations by phone initially, and then in a more well-structured way with customers. And thousands of people were ready to do that, even if they were at home with some situation that could be also more protected and more comfort. So it was really amazing, because at least 1,500 people were able to join a training program, and they were able to do 50% of turnover just by phone calls and video conferences with customers. And we discovered that people are ready to change, but they have to have the good motivations. Of course, COVID give also this sentiment of urgency, and it's harder to do the same things in normal period. But I think that sometimes organizations has themselves some mindset limits, some mindset barriers. Other ways of doing things are possible.
Cristian, let me ask you a follow-up, or actually a bit of a different questions. You have here the top of the European Commission in dealing with jobs and skills. So we have a few more minutes before we all depart. So if there is one or two wishes that you would like from the European Union, what would that be?
The question is for me?
Yes.
Didn't get it. Yes, sorry. But I think that we have been talking about rights. I think there's a right of learning, and we have to act this right, because normally we think that scholarization is just a period of life at the beginning of the life, but it's not anymore like that. Scholarizations must be also came in a second period in order to reskilling our competencies. So I think that there's a lot of building with trade unions to focus their activity, also to push all the system, public systems, companies, employees, in order to accept these new repairs, this new point of see about scholarizations.
Good. Tomáš, let me come back to you in the Czech Republic on these issues of upskilling, reskilling. How do your member companies do this? Do they do this on their own? Is it very much about employer branding and a bit of a competitive pressure there among themselves, or is there something that you provide? Is there some common as a federation, or I mean, like we see, for example, in Germany, they're very well known, which we'll hear in the next panel. about some of the association providing a lot of apprenticeship mechanism. Do you do something like that, or is it company to company? And how much is done with trade unions?
Thank you, Cristian. Can I also have first a wish for the European Commission? Just if there's one thing I would like to ask, make sure when you guys look at the national recovery plans, that you actually push for a significant chunk of money going for reskilling and upskilling. And I think the same when we now work with the allocation of cohesion funds, because what I see in many countries is a significant push to have as much money for physical infrastructure, and even cuts now with the cuts coming in from many countries, cuts primarily going towards the soft programs for employment. I think that will be a huge issue, and I think deserves a lot of attention from the European Commission. Going back to Cristian's question, what we try to do is to first agree also with trade unions on common standards, as much as we can, that there should be specific standards on what each of the jobs requires. We've put together in the last 2 years national standards across many industries, including retail, what should be the qualifications, what should be the trainings required. Each year, when we actually work on the collective contract with the trade unions, a minimum amount of trainings is also a significant portion of the negotiations and of the agreement, not only increases in salaries. So again, this is what we tried. And we try to make sure also that we share good practices. And just like we have the discussion here, every year we organize a specific major conference on retail and employees in retail. We have one huge conference, a retail summit on general retail issues, and then every September, October, we have a major event that highlights positive examples of reskilling and upskilling our employees. We also seen in the last about 3 years that some of the retailers actually have advertised how well they pay their employees. We had huge billboard campaigns from Lidl, for example, saying that how much a shop assistant actually makes, again, to improve the image of retail as an interesting and long-term employer. So we also work on this public perception of retail. And that is, I think, what we also do together. Then there's also a lot of individual activities. And we see, and that's, I think, the final point, really, the COVID has shown us that we need to invest much more also in, let's say, psychological stability of the people. Because in the spring, we had customers bringing face masks to the people working in shops. But the last 3 months, we actually seen a lot of hostility when our staff enforces limits of customers in the shops, etc. Again, they are quite often targeted with abuse. So that has been a new element we've never had to deal with in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomáš. And we're coming very much to the end of our panel. I would like to give the last word to Joost Korte. So I think for some concluding remarks, what you have heard, what are you taking home, from us in terms of wishes and ask, and what are you taking home as perception of retail and wholesale in terms of what we do, and maybe a last question, what can we do as a sector and as an organization to help you in achieving the objectives that you have? So if you can maybe briefly try to give some concluding remarks on these 2 points, and before we conclude.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Cristian, for that. Let me briefly say what I in response to your questions. I think the first is that I'm very happy, honestly, when I listen to Cristian, Susana, and also to Tomáš about how they are approaching this issue, because I think that is really the key. And I'm really impressed what ADEO is doing in terms of recruiting people, all these new forms, looking for talent, leaving also the initiative. I mean, this is music to my ears. So I can only say that on all these issues, you are really on the right, very much on the right track, because you are, in fact, already implementing at the level of your own business sort of the principles and the ideas that we try to spread everywhere. And secondly, I think that is also in a way, isn't that also why your employees are in fact ready to change? Because I think the change, I'm also fascinated by how resilient in fact the people are in this unprecedented pandemic, and how good they are by and large. I mean, there are exceptions, but the vast majority of the people are totally responsible, and they are ready to go into this process, which is quite a fascinating process, and which defies a lot of the fears that people have always had about the resistance to change. And one thing which I thought which makes the difference is indeed that if this happens in the context of a responsible employer, like what I hear now, or if this happens in a European Union and member states which are prepared to spend enormous amounts on short-term work schemes and are providing the minimum security that is needed, and apparently people are ready to think and to reflect and to make very fundamental changes to their lives. I think it's also the strength of the institutions, the strength of the authorities, and the help, the very concrete help that is being offered, which is a huge difference compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, the financial crisis, when I think the answer was rather more the opposite. It was only austerity, austerity. So I think, again, there we're on the right track. On the skills and the need to have a continuous skills agenda that starts indeed in school but doesn't stop there. And that's why we have this the upskilling and reskilling part, where indeed the emphasis should be to make it much easier for people to be trained on the job, and not once but constantly, in fact, your whole life. It means a big change. There we are going to come next year with a proposal specifically addressed to help companies, which would be the individual learning account, in an attempt to be helpful, in particular for smaller companies, I think, because they are more, I think SMEs in particular must be struggling to organize the training of their staff. If you only have 10 people employed, then it's not so easy. So we're trying to help them there. And then finally, in response to Thomas's question about the recovery plan, indeed, this is what we're doing. The Recovery and Resilience Facility, as it is called, the message is always that recovery and resilience is also social. It's not only infrastructure or greening. There is a very important social component in that plan, which I think is recognized by everyone, which is also in the regulation. And I think it is important that we give this message to member states that they have to take up this enormous opportunity to now invest. They can invest very substantial amounts of money through these funds in their skills sector. We've actually produced a flagship for this as well, which is part of the guidance that we give to member states. So far, we see that member states are struggling, including your own. I think from the Czech Republic, I have some mixed messages. And I think they're struggling because for them, this whole facility is also a completely new approach, because it's not the structural funds. It's not macroeconomic assistance either. It's somewhere in the middle. And I think they're struggling with the organization inside each member state, inside each, and then the regions, who's in charge. And then they need plans, and fast, because the RRF, this has to be committed within 3 years. So by the end of 2023, it's over, which means that I think they will be tempted, in order not to lose this money, to go for projects that are already there, and most of them will be infrastructure. Commission is pushing back, and we really want them to invest also in human capital. So we're doing, I think, already what you are suggesting. But of course, it would help enormously if you would also give this message to the authorities and do this advocacy for these investments.
Thank you very much, Joost, and thank you very much, Joost. We've heard these messages, and indeed we have also called for a European Pact for Commerce to make sure that all this money will be put to good use, and of course that the importance of retail and wholesale is recognized for the digitalization, sustainability of the economy, also for jobs in our local communities. Maintaining and keeping shops open in villages and towns are very important for the social fabrics of our European societies. Let me just thank you again, all of the panelists, for a great panel. It's been a delight to exchange views and ideas and insights. Susana, Cristian, Tomáš, Denis, and Joost for a very interesting and productive panel. And I would say thank you all for having listened to this second panel. You have 10 minutes to stretch your legs, get a coffee, go to the bathroom, and be tuned into our next session, which starts at 3:30. Will be moderated by my colleague Christelle, and will focus specifically on the issues of reskilling and upskilling in our companies to address the particular challenges that we have discussed. Thank you all very much, and have a good rest of the afternoon.